everyone and welcome to our channel. My name is Eleonora Romanini. I'm a registered migration agent in Perth and my agency is Green Wings Migration. Today I want to talk to you about Visa 494. Visa 494 is a kind of sponsorship, so you will need the support from an Australian business who's willing to hire you on a full-time basis and offer you the possibility of getting a working visa alongside your contract position. The main difference between Visa 482 and 494 is that 494 visa is only and exclusively available in those areas of Australia that are considered being regional. On this point, you will see that basically 90% of the territory of Australia is considered regional for this purpose. But to make sure that you can get a 494 visa, I would suggest that you check the link on the department's website, which specifies the postcodes that are considered as being regional Australia. Another difference between Visa 482 and Visa 494 is that Visa 494 is approved for 5 years, and you can apply for your permanent residency after 3 years of working on the visa. Pay attention that I said working on the visa, not necessarily working for the same employer. That's another big difference between the two visas options. In fact, with Visa 482, as we discussed in our other video, you must work 2 years for the same business in order to achieve eligibility for permanent residency. Visa 494 instead allows you to change business without losing time for your eligibility, but it takes a little bit longer, 3 years instead of 2. It's also important that you always work in the same occupation that you were nominated for. If you require changing your nominated occupation, you would also need to apply for a new visa. When you change employer, obviously you can transfer your nomination only and you can keep the visa until its natural expiry. But let's check in more details what the process involves. As I said at the beginning, it's a sponsored visa. So the business you work for or you intend to work for must become an approved sponsor. This sponsorship is the same sponsorship that applies to 482 visa scheme. So if the business you work for or intend to work for has already been approved as an SBS, standard business sponsorship, they don't need to apply again, as long as obviously the approval is still valid. And remember that the approval is normally in place for 5 years from the day they received the positive outcome by the Department of Home Affairs. The second step that's involved is the nomination. So again, it's the same step as for 482 visa, but it applies only to regional Australia. Since it applies only to regional Australia, there is an additional step that goes alongside the nomination, which is the RCB Approval. RCB stands for Regional Certifying Body. Every state has identified one or more regional offices which are responsible to pre-approve a nomination that needs to be sponsored. And in particular, the RCB role is to confirm that the salary you are being offered is in line with the market expectations, the famous Australian market salary rate. The market rate can be explained as the salary that an Australian citizen would be happy to accept to do that job that you're being sponsored for, taking into consideration something that is called also TSMIT, Temporary Skills Migration Threshold, which is the minimum salary applicable to any kind of sponsorship visa. So on the 1st of July 2024, the minimum salary increased and it is now $73,150 plus GST. So as a general rule, once you receive a sponsorship offer, you need to sit down with your employer and negotiate a salary that is at least $73,150 plus super, but also in line with the market rate. Once the RCB is approved, it stays in place for 3 months, so the nomination can be lodged alongside the RCB or once the RCB is approved. In the nomination, we find again the need for the business to show that they try to look for an Australian worker and they haven't been successful in their research. This is the labor market testing. Labor market testing can be conducted online. It has to be live for 28 days. The business needs to collect the resumes and write a statement explaining why those applicants were not considered suitable for the position. Something extremely important is that, differently from 482 nominations, in a 494 contest, we cannot accept the ITOs. So international agreements that would void the labor market testing requirement in 482 visas don't apply to 494. So labor market testing, it's always required in this kind of visa scheme. And finally, we have the visa application. Now, as I said before, the visa 494 allows everyone to apply for their permanent residency. It goes without saying that the department wants to make sure that you are really a skilled person, that you are really suitable for that position. So the entry-level criteria are a little bit higher than what you need to demonstrate for visa 482. And in particular, I'm talking about the need of having a positive skills assessment, regardless of the occupation. Everyone needs it. They need to demonstrate at least 3 years of skilled work experience on a full-time basis or pro rata. And they need to have a higher level of English competency. So you must achieve competent English, which is IELTS 6 in each component or PTE 50. Differently from visa 482, visa 494 also requires secondary applicants to show their English competency through functional English. Functional English is average of 4.5 in the IELTS test, average of 30 in the PTE, or alternatively, you may also get this visa as a secondary applicant if you attended compulsory schooling in English or 2/3 years of higher education in English. Obviously, it's a visa where the whole family can be included. There are certain limitations pertaining to children, same as other visas as well. So if a child is a minor, there is no issues whatsoever. They can be included because they are dependent on you, knowing, however, that if they are children from a previous relationship, the non-migrating parent must give their authorization to the migration of the child. If they are above 16, they also need to present police certificates. Normally, a child can be included with no particular issues up until they are 23 years old, provided that you can show they are clearly dependent on you. So if they are studying at university, they still need to be dependent on you. They must not be working in order to support themselves. You must be, as the main applicant and as the wife or husband of the main applicant, the main bread provider for these children. If they are above 23, however, then it's a more unfortunate situation, because if they are healthy, they cannot be included anymore. They are considered adults and they have to find their own way. They could be included, however, if they are incapacitated in some sort of way, and always be mindful that their situation must not be against the health criteria. So we need to assess what's the condition that affects them. Can it be considered a too high cost for the Department of Home Affairs to allow those children to migrate with you? There is an important age consideration to be made for this visa. On the day of your application, you must have not turned 45 years old. If you turn 45 while the visa is in processing, there is no issues whatsoever. In order to apply for your permanent residency, you may be over 45, okay? So that's also a big difference between 494 and 482. 494 visa, it's an option that older applicants may consider because it puts less pressure on them when it comes to their age consideration. The transition to permanent residency happens through visa 191. Once you are ready to apply for visa 191, you don't need any employer support any longer. So visa 494 could be a little bit cheaper for the business who decides to sponsor you, and therefore they might be a little bit more inclined to accept sponsorship through visa 494 rather than visa 482 for two reasons. It costs less it doesn't require their support on the long run, and also, 3 reasons, it also requires you to be around for 3 years, not 2. Again, I say around, not necessarily with them, because you could change and nothing changes for you in terms of eligibility for 191 visa. Once you are ready to apply for visa 191, there will be a series of criteria that you must show. First of all, that you have always lived in the regional area where the visa was approved, that you stayed there for 3 years, that you earn money through full-time employment, and that the whole family was there. So the department will ask you to present evidence of your children having attended schooling in the regional area. Your income statements become very important at this point, as well as your notice of assessments. If you don't know how to download or obtain your notice of assessments and income statements, please go onto the ATO website. There is a very specific guideline about how to access these records. And again, if you cannot get them out of your profile on the ATO system, then please check with your tax agent, because they definitely have access to those information on your behalf. It's important to remember that once your 494 visa is granted, the department will check that you are actually staying in the regional area. So on a regular basis, they will send requests of further information, and the request basically aims to ask you to provide evidence that you are working and living, and if your children are studying in the regional area as well. So always keep in mind that you might be asked to provide copies of your rental agreements, copies of your utility notices with your address on it, updated copies of employment contracts if you received pay rises, copies of your pay slips, everything basically that puts you in the regional area for the 3 years, which is the required amount of time. Last but not least, if you apply for this visa from overseas, which is possible, you will have 90 days to come to Australia and take up the position that you have been sponsored for. Right, I think this is all for visa 494. If you have any more questions, please contact us, and we'll be very happy to help you and support you and your business achieving this important goal. So if you find this new video interesting, please reach out. We are available on Facebook, Instagram, via email. Our office is in Perth, in Mount Auburn. Please remember that we only work by appointment, so we don't accept walk-ins, unfortunately. In order to book a consultation with us, you can jump online, check our website. There is a very nice booking page where you can choose to have a consultation with me, Eleonora, or my colleagues, Fermesk and Stefania. We are all equally knowledgeable or equally licensed, so you are in good hands, no matter who is the consultant booked with. See you next video. Ciao!